Dr. Stephen Prescott, president of the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, is a curious man. That is not a slight. He really is curious, and always has been, about almost everything. And that's how he ended up where he is.
Various stages in life, you figure out who you are, if you're lucky. And I realized that I was pretty curious about things and always wanted to know, well, why do you say that? And I didn't just like accepting that, TV cameras work this way because. I said, really? Why? Why? And so I'd always want to ask what was behind that statement. And so you realize that in most of medicine, a lot of what we do today, the best we can do today is kind of anecdotal. I did it for my patients because my professor did it for her patients, and she did it because her professor, and so it's sort of handed down like an apprenticeship program. And often that's good. I'm not being critical of that necessarily, but we often also discover that some of those things that are handed down aren't right.
He looks for that spark in the people he brings to OMRF, and it's proven successful. He identifies closely with his researchers.
The value of curiosity for researchers, I said, all good researchers are just innately curious. That's what drives them. That's why they do it. You have to reward people properly. I mean, there has to be incentive for what you want. They don't want money. They want credit for their ideas and that they solved this problem. I solved it,
OMRF has grown in scope and size since he took the reins in 2006. He's not always scientific, though he holds many degrees and honors, and his approach to funding is often different and remarkably successful.
The idea of endowment is forever. Pretty long time. Do we really think that we should be running a research institute like this one 100 years from now? It better be pretty different. I mean, I have no idea how different it'll be, but it better be really different. Otherwise, it'll be worthless. What about 200 years from now? What about 1,000 years from now? An endowment assumes that, right? So that's why I'm a little bit puckish when I say that. But it's so really long range in sort of historical terms. We won't be here. We shouldn't be here. We should have done what we're supposed to do, in which case we should quit. Or we didn't do what we're supposed to, in which case we should quit. So, we should put ourselves out of business one way or the other over some period of time.
But Steve applies a very entrepreneurial approach to it. He does a great job of not only understanding the science, but then understanding the future of the science, and does a phenomenal job bringing scarce resources for those projects that have a future. And when you have limited capital, that's critical. And he's done a phenomenal job of choosing between the science that is leading to something and the science that is reaching a dead end. And that probably amazes me more than anything about Steve.
He calls himself a regular guy, but his fundraising and research has brought him friendships with music, sports, and even political stars. He has started companies, is a gourmet cook, a musician, and is well-traveled, and yet he can still explain gene research to fifth graders. Sitting still is not his style.
What I do worry about there, what does science need? It needs smart people from the next generation. And there have been reasons for the allure to fall off. Scientists don't make as much money as investment bankers, or even software engineers, or certainly not rock stars or whatever. So when you look at Ivy League schools where half of the graduating class goes to work on Wall Street the day after graduation, I worry not just about science but about other parts of our society, but particularly about science, because I don't want those really clever, curious people just lured away just for the money right off the top.
Steve's a Renaissance guy. I mean, he not only is a scientist, but he's also a good old Texas boy in a lot of ways. I've gone hunting with him and he's a better shot. He's a musician, which I'm not, And when we sit around and smoke cigars and drink whiskey, he can throw back 2 fingers of Pappy Van Winkle better than I can. And all at the same time, he's a scientist. I mean, you think like, how could anyone be so diversely talented as Steve is? But above all that, he's just a good guy.
For being curious, thinking differently, pushing the limits of research, and promoting better health and living for all of us, we present the Oklahoma Commerce and Industry Hall of Honor's President's Award to Dr. Stephen Prescott.